As the military campaign against ISIL continues, there are major differences between coalition partners. The US government has made it clear that eliminating the radical group should be the priority. But some allies insist that Syrian President Bashar al-Assad should also be targeted. So what's the priority? Getting rid of ISIL or Assad? This is Inside Story. Hello and welcome to the program. I'm Mike Hanna. As fighters with the Islamic State of Iraq and the Levant make the advances in Iraq and Syria, the US-led coalition strategy in the region is being questioned. In the province of Anbar in Iraq, ISIL fighters are now in control of an abandoned military base, also in the town of Heat, as well as in Ramadi, Fallujah and Haditha. And in Syria, ISIL is threatening to take over the town of Kobani. US Secretary of State John Kerry has called what's happening there a tragedy, but says what happens to a particular town does not define the coalition's strategy. But the coalition itself is divided, a number of members arguing that the question of dealing with the Assad regime has been lost because of the US government's preoccupation with ISIL. The US government has deferred any action against the Syrian president, a strategy that's been described as ISIL first. That's in contrast to Turkey, Qatar and Saudi Arabia, who all believe that dealing with President Bashar al-Assad should be the top priority. The US Secretary of State John Kerry has acknowledged that President Bashar al-Assad is in fact using ISIL to his own advantage. Kerry says there is evidence that Assad has played footsie with them and he has used them as a tool of weakening the opposition. Kerry continues, he never took on their headquarters, which were there and obvious, and other assets that they have. So we have no confidence that Assad is either capable of or willing to take on ISIL. Well, let's now bring in our guests to discuss all these issues. From Jeddah, Khaled Batafi, senior columnist for the Saudi Gazette. In Beirut, Elias Hanna, retired Lebanese army general. And here with me in Doha, Saleh Mubarak, member of the Syrian National Council. Welcome to you all. Let's begin with Saleh Mubarak. To what extent has the battle against ISIL diverted attention from the campaign against Assad?
Well, to a large extent, unfortunately. Well, the Free Syrian Army was not diverted. It's still battling Assad every day, but the attention of the whole world went to this, as this is, America always puts the label of war on terrorism and labels terrorism on its own subjective terms. So it is taking a lot of attention, and that's not good because if you remember, just after the first strikes of the coalition, Assad used some chemical weapons, the chlorine gas, because the whole world is busy watching another front.
Well, Khaled Batafi, your view about this, is attention being diverted from the campaign against Assad?
Yes, of course, but where is the campaign to start with? I mean, the campaign never started against Assad from those allies. Yes, some countries in the region are helping the opposition, but that's it. America and the Western powers and all the others, they never started the campaign to start with.
Well, Elias Hanna, your view?
I think we have to ask the question in different approach. Does the United States of America wants to get rid of the regime in Syria? I'm not talking about the person. Maybe the person will be, vulnerable and they will go. But this regime for the United States of America was not the first priority. So that's why this reluctant America not to really put the money, prepare the moderate opposition, and then try to create a certain military balance inside, which may help to go to the political table. And all of a sudden we have ISIL. So I don't think that the United States of America intentions first priority is to get rid of Assad, because they were thinking about what's gonna come after al-Assad.
Well, Khaled Batafi, your view of that issue of what's going to come after Assad. There's no discussion whatsoever in the campaign against ISIL about what happens post-Assad in Syria.
Well, if it's the same government, only we change a couple of faces, then we have changed nothing. The same government with the same link to Iran and Iraq, we will have no difference than what is, we have today. But it has to be a different government that encompass all the opposition and all the legitimate forces on the ground, and a government that would start what al-Abadi did and maybe not finished yet, to include the Sunnis and the tribes and the Kurds and everybody else in a coalition to start a new Syria. I believe in this case the Gulf countries and Turkey will definitely support such a government.
Well, Salim Mubarak, let's just stick with this campaign against ISIL and the impact it's having. Now, some argue that far from actually defeating it or hindering it, this campaign is actually bolstering its support. Syrian people confused as to exactly what the target is when they see bombs around them, Syrian civilians reportedly killed in these ongoing coalition bombing attacks.
Absolutely. You know, bombing from the air only is not sufficient, and I'm sure the general will shed some light on this. But wars have never been won by only an air campaign. You need ground, soldiers on the ground. And right now, whose soldiers? Because the Western countries are not putting soldiers. Turkey is putting conditions on that. The Free Syrian Army, the moderate opposition, is not well equipped, not well armed, not well trained. So you're right. When let me use this expression. When you use pesticides against certain insects and you can't kill them, you build immunity against that, and they become stronger. And I think ISIL has become smart in avoiding. Yes, there are casualties, but despite the heavy campaign of bombing, they did occupy Kobani. They went all the way and they took it. So they managed to get around this. They're not moving by 4x4 trucks or cars. They're moving by motorcycles and other means to avoid heavy casualties. So it's not achieving. And you're right, the Syrian people are very leery. They're very suspicious of what's going on because from the first day, several negative signs have been observed. One of them is that the bombing did not only include ISIL, but it included other organizations that wasn't clear in the objective of the coalition. Number two, there was casualties among the Syrians, collateral damage. They call it collateral damage, but that's not acceptable from the first day. Women and children have been killed by those raids.
Well, Elias Hanna, the concept of a bombing campaign as a military strategy has been used many times, particularly by the US, and yet there always has to be an end game if it is to succeed, does it not? There doesn't appear to be any end game in terms of what the US is doing in relation to ISIL in the wider context, which is the battle against al-Assad.
I think, the Syrian population is not, for me, is not a priority for the United States of America. The grand strategy of the United States of America, now they are waging an air campaign, but we have to differentiate between two theaters, the Syrian and the Iraqi. And the major goal for the United States of America is to maybe separate these two levels because they have different dynamics. Let's say for Iraq, we're talking about ISIL. ISIL waging war in Heat, waging war in Al-Anbar, waging war in Al-Mosul, and then on Kobani, this huge area and this huge capability. It's not really, in the sense of the military approach or parlance, it's not really a small terrorist organization that you can defeat in 2 days and 3 days. It's a project, it's a process, it's not a decision. In Iraq, you have the air campaign and you have the boots on the ground, which is the Peshmerga, and you have the Iraqi. They are not really ready. But the problem of the United States of America, that you are allying yourself with the Peshmerga, but you are letting the Kurds to be killed in Kobani. and on the Syrian level. And the process is now to really degrade and separate the two theaters and then go into spend the $500 million in preparing the so-called moderates opposition in Syria in order to wage war against the regime and then create a certain military balance of power inside and then go to the table. Can we achieve all of this, in a very short period of time? Even though the enemy is totally different, it's not really a conventional enemy. Now, where is the core, where is the center of gravity of all what's happening is Turkey. Now, if you want to see what's the future of this campaign, we have to look out about what Erdogan is going to say and behave in the coming future.
Well, Khaled Batafi, you mentioned the issue of Turkey a short while ago as well. Turkey appears to be making very clear that while it is prepared to lend assistance at this point to allow access to its bases within Turkey, it wants to know what the end game is before it fully commits its resources to the battle against ISIL. Turkey's position is that the priority is the battle against al-Assad. Now, this is Turkey's position very clearly. Members of the coalition, such as Saudi Arabia, such as Qatar, are, it appears, coming along and in line greater with this opinion, bringing it to the attention of the United States. This threatens the coalition, does it not?
It's true. America never showed an interest in changing the regime in Syria. It gave us lip service all the time, but when it comes to action, there was no action, and we have plenty of doubts whether this is the end game or not. They just wanted us to help them to get rid of Daesh. I won't call it the Islamic State because it isn't. It is Daesh, as it's commonly known. But after that, what happens? We heard before noise about bombing Syrian army installation, and then they had a deal. And we heard a lot of promises before and never materialized. So we have plenty of doubts that we are actually might be helping the Syrian regime who created, together with the Maliki regime, the Daesh phenomena, to ask for help from the Americans and the Western allies, and to show that they are fighting against Islamic terrorism. So if that's the case, then that's exactly what we are going to give them. We are giving them a weaker opposition and strengthening their ability to continue their path, killing their own people.
Well, Khaled Batafi, if I can just stay with you with a follow-up question. At what stage do you think that the coalition starts splintering over this? Qatar, Saudi Arabia, very important members of the coalition. What is the line for them that they will not cross? At what stage do they say, you have got to change your strategy or make it clearer?
I'm sure they have their own intelligence and they have their own resources to know if the Americans are serious enough or not. I don't have that access to that intelligence, but when they know that the Americans will end the game once they weakened Daesh and stop there and not helping in changing the government in Syria, then the American will have reluctant partners in their campaign and in their war.
Salam Mubarak, from this conversation, it's quite clear that there's like poles here. The one is the US way of dealing with things. The other is Turkey's apparent way of wanting to deal with things. The coalition partners being, in a way, torn between the two. Would you agree?
Absolutely. Absolutely. And Turkey is being pushed now to interfere or to allow the Kurdish population in Turkey to cross the borders and help in Kobani. And many in the Syrian opposition are asking, why should Turkey interfere to help Kobani, and Turkey wasn't allowed to help Homs or Halab, Aleppo, or any of the other? What about the 250,000 Syrians killed by the regime? Why the world and the Western world in particular, and the United States, didn't move at all. Like my colleague in Jeddah said, it gave us only lip service. How many times the United States said Assad lost its legitimacy and Assad's days are numbered and so on, and threatened by the strike, and they did absolutely nothing? Why is it all of a sudden they are raising hell about ISIL? And we're not arguing that ISIL is indeed a terrorist organization, but I think Assad is the bigger of the two evil, and Assad must be dealt with. And for that reason, I think the Syrian opposition, by and large, it aligns itself with the Turkish position. And I see that the GCC countries, Saudi Arabia, Qatar, are also moving in that direction. And hopefully they will be able to persuade the American partner that we cannot say that ISIL is first. No. It's going to be a plan with clear objective of, maybe we will not remove the Assad regime ourselves, but we will provide the tools to the Syrian opposition to do that, and that includes a no-fly zone and well-trained Syrian opposition.
Ilyas Hanna, to look at this strategy, the strategy that is being headed by the US, and here you have a situation where they say, right, we are involved with dealing with the Assad problem. Then you have the situation where it's saying, we are attacking, we are carrying out a war now against ISIL. Yet the two are completely interlinked. You can't separate out the one from the other, can you? There appears to be a lack of grand vision in terms of the US approach to this, that's saying the root of the problem, why ISIL is operating both in Iraq and in Syria, is because of the Assad regime in the first place. You cannot separate it out, can you, in terms of dealing with it?
I think we have to look at the problem in different geostrategic or strategic perspective. What is really strategic for Saudi Arabia, for instance, is vital for the Kurds in Kobani. What is really highly important national interest for Turkey, it's totally different from the United States of America perspective. The United States of America, let's say, regardless of, the conspiracy theory who made ISIL and ISIL maybe started in 2006, in 2004 in Syria, in Iraq. It's not all of a sudden pop up like ISIL. Now, when we talk about, let's say, Turkey, if it let the Kurdish, die or be defeated in Kobani, they will have internally 14 million Kurds. If they destroy the regime as Alawi, they have their own 8% Alawi population. If they if they destroy the ISIL, it's like, Sunni killing the Sunni, and then Iran will benefit. So the thing that we have really understand is the grand strategy maybe of Turkey. And if you allow me for a minute to say that Erdogan in a speech in Marmara University, when he said, and allow me to read this, Turkey is the only country that can provide peace in the region. Turkey is the hope of the Middle East people. Turkey can remove the barriers between Middle Eastern people not by changing physical border, but by instilling hope and trust, he added. So when we say and hear that Erdogan is talking about this perspective, maybe there is a lot of controversy and contradiction between his own political and strategic goal in Syria, and then of Saudi Arabia, of Iraq, and as well as for the United States of America. Now the issue is this triangle, or maybe triangle, not really triangle. When you talk about Turkey and Iran and then Israel, when you look at in the middle, you see that the burning issue is the Fertile Crescent. We are paying the price, but are we seeing the real picture, strategic picture? Clearly, I don't think so.
Well, Khaled Batafi, your view about one specific thing there, the importance of Turkey in terms of dealing with the Assad regime.
It is very important. They are the neighbor who can do something about. They have the army, they have the interest, they have hundreds of thousands of refugees in their land, and they are increasing by the day. So they have every intensive to help, but they are right. They cannot just jump in with this Daesh issue without linking it to the source of the problem, which is al-Assad regime. Let us remember that Erdogan was a good friend of al-Assad, and he was the one who changed the attitude of the Turkish attitude towards Syria, and there was a a time when they were very strong allies. And he was advising him all along to change his attitude. Only when he saw that Assad is not going and he is driving his country down, that he changed his attitude. So I think we should listen to Erdogan, not because he has the power to help, but he has also the interest and the wisdom to think that the grand strategy we are talking about.
Saleh Mubarak, this issue, once again, I spoke about the two poles, but at the present you have a coalition led by the US. Would the Syrian people, those who actually do want to see change, rather see a more effective coalition of which Turkey is an operating partner on its strategy designed with Gulf countries such as Qatar and Saudi Arabia?
Absolutely, absolutely. I think the Syrian people have more trust in Turkey, a lot more trust in Turkey than in the United States. It's our neighbor. It's not going to go anywhere. We have 900 kilometers borders, and they have well treated the Syrian refugees, 1.5 million. Now, let's remind ourselves with one fact, that more and more refugees are coming every day, and Turkey cannot bear with that pressure anymore. It's creating some social issues here. As our colleague mentioned, there are some Kurds and Alawis in Turkey and so on. So Turkey's plan was to settle these people in the northern strip of Syria and make that as a no-fly zone. And it demanded that from the coalition, that we need to establish a safe haven for Syrian refugees, repatriate them inside Syria, but in a safe area. And unfortunately, the United States has not yet, first of all, Chuck Hagel said that no, and then I think John Kerry said it's debatable. So Turkey has more stake in the Syrian issue than any other country in the region. I would believe so. And Turkey is the strongest out of all the neighbors. It's a strong country. It's about 85 million, strong economy, strong army. So I think Turkey is the major player. And I agree with my colleague from Jeddah. We should listen to Erdogan. We should align ourselves. Hopefully the GCC and the Syrian coalition will all align themselves as one bloc and tell the United States that we have to make clear that removing this Assad regime is a priority for us.
Elias Hanna, a question that I brought up earlier, I will bring up again to you. Can the US-led coalition withstand these discussions, these divisions, these debates that are being carried out? Can it continue to exist in its current format, or is the coalition in danger of falling apart?
I think there is no choice. There is no other choices. The United States of America committed itself militarily, at least from the air power, from air. I mean, what is going to happen and on the ground is going to be from the local powers, from the local forces. They have to deal with it. It is a process. It's going to, last maybe for more than 5 to 10 years to see some solution in the region. And Turkey wants to create a buffer zone and no-fly zone. The main issue for this one is to really have Syria under its own sphere of influence. And this is the main issue. Now, would America give this green light? Yes, I think, because what Erdogan wants is certain legitimacy from the international community, as well as from the Sunni Arab countries, to create this one as a sphere of influence.
Khaled Batafi, very quickly, you heard the phrase there, from the Sunni countries, that aura of legitimacy that Erdogan is looking for. Does he have it, do you believe?
He needs the support of the Sunni countries, and they are the majority in the region, except for Iran and, half of Iraq. The Sunni countries are making the majority, and they are his neighbors. And without them, they cannot proceed. And I think without him also, we cannot proceed. We need to be together on this.
Very quickly, Saleh Mubarak, and I don't want to leave it on a question of ethnicity here or religion, that the idea that it's a Sunni campaign being conducted by Erdogan is far wider than that. And Turkey's in a position, actually, to be non-sectarian in getting rid of the Assad regime, is it not?
Absolutely. In fact, we in the Syrian coalition, we told our people many, many times we don't want to fall into the trap of the Syrian regime of making this war secure. No, it's not. It's about justice. It's about freedom. It's about dignity for the Syrian people. Look at the Syrian coalition now. Look at the Syrian National Council, which I'm a member of. It represents all sectors of the Syrian people, all the races, all the ethnicities, all the religions, all, you know, everything. So we don't want to, you know, we're looking even, you know, Iran now is an enemy of us, true. But in the strategic look in the future, we look at friendly relationship with everyone in the region. But after we establish a strong country that provides freedom and dignity to everyone.
Thank you very much indeed. At that point, my thanks to our guests, Khaled Batafi, Elias Hanna, and Salah Mubarak. And please feel free to add your voice to this discussion. You can leave your comments at facebook.com/AJ Inside Story. We're also on Twitter. Look for @AJ Inside Story. I'm Mike Hanna. Thanks for watching, and goodbye for now.